what really initiated you to get involved with this cause?
Well, it was a Twitter thing. So the people doing the petition tweeted it to me, and I had a look at it, and I read the material, and it seemed to me that something very strange and unfair and weird and just awfully peculiar had been going on. So I felt that this group really deserved support on all sorts of levels, but one of them being that if you can subvert the due process, if you can make legislation and then make a loophole in it for one group, that's very strange and pretty sinister. I see it as the kind of thing that if it goes through with this very suspicious process, the suspicious, unprecedented process in which a loophole has been made for one development and one only, that it sets a very, very bad precedent.
So for the uninformed that don't have any knowledge about what's going on here, how would you sort of quantify what's at stake here?
What's at stake is on about 4 different levels. Number one, process. It seems like a very, very weird, peculiar thing that has gone on and nobody quite knows what happened. That's bad. You do need openness and transparency in a democracy because citizens need to know who's making the decisions that are going to wreck their lives or improve their lives. We always hope for improvement, but this is a life-wrecking event right here going on. Number one, that. Number two, we heard about the effluent, a kind word for what goes down the toilet and what you pour down the sink. That effluent is supposedly treated in some way, although people don't even know much about that either because they haven't been told. That's going to flow down a small creek into one of the most significant wetlands on the face of the planet, which it will destroy. Even if we're just that much water going in there, it would still destroy it. But it's going to be effluent, and then it's going to go out into Georgian Bay, where a lot of people have cottages, and a lot of the people who have cottages have children, and a lot of the children swim in Georgian Bay. So if I were them, I would be very, very concerned about all of this effluent, 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools per day. Multiply that by per month and then per year is going to go into Georgian Bay. Number two, where's that water going to come from? Is it going to come out of an aquifer? Has anybody done any studies about the effect of taking all of that water out of the ground? What sort of effect is that going to have on everybody else? What number am I up to? Let's say number 4. Where are the people who are going to live in this city the size of Aurelia being created on prime farmland? Where are those people going to go to work? Well, it's not going to be in Midhurst because there are not jobs for those people in Midhurst. So they're going to commute. Where are they going to commute to? Who's going to pay for the roads for them to commute on? And what is that going to do to, number 1, the ratepayers, number 2, the Ontario taxpayers? What's that going to do to their taxes? Who's going to pay for the infrastructure for this city the size of Aurelia being put on prime farmland? Who's going to pay for the maintenance of the infrastructure? We haven't even talked about the destruction of prime farmland and how little of it there is left. We have not talked about the fact that the Minising wetland is on every international environmental organization's world map.
Now, I know you're not against change, but what would you define as sustainable development?
Well, number 1, if you're going to put new buildings, new living quarters, and of course we all live in dwellings. Somebody has built those dwellings, so we're not saying don't build any more dwellings. But if you're going to build more dwellings, why don't you put them where the jobs are? Number 1, the people living there are going to be infinitely grateful to you because they're not going to spend half their life sitting on a blocked roadway steaming or freezing. the other part of sustainable is if you've got prime farmland, why don't you use it as prime farmland? It took 13,000 years to build that soil. Once that soil is gone, it's gone. You know, it's very, very hard to build that soil up again. It takes years and years and decades and centuries to build up good soil.
What could you say to the people that sit on the sideline and say, well, that's sad for Midhurst, but really it's not my backyard?
You're going to end up paying for it. That's what I would say to them. You're always so worried about your taxes. Well, have a good look at this and look at the implications. And then look also at the implications of what happens if there's a big rain downpour, of which we're getting more and more frequently. What's the first thing that always goes in those things? The sewage system breaks down. It backs up, it overflows. Where's that all going to go? It's going to go down into the wetland and out into Georgian Bay. And you're going to be swimming in poop. That's what I would say to the cottagers of Georgian Bay. So it does concern you. If you're anywhere near it, if you live in Ontario, it concerns you.
Does environmental causes somehow sometimes face the problem that it becomes the prototypical tree hugger against the capitalist? Is there a part of
This is not the prototypical tree hugger against the capitalist. This is the prototypical ratepayer against some people who did some pretty secretive things to them behind their backs that they're going to have to end up paying for. So even if there were no wetland, even if there were no anything, this would still be bad.
You had mentioned that the same government that actually committed the foul is kind of on record now saying we'll try to correct the
Yeah, that's correct.
Take them to task type thing.
Well, I think holding people to their word, and my information came out of a letter written by the Liberal Party and Premier Wynne during the recent election to Ducks Unlimited Canada. And Ducks Unlimited said to each political party, what's your stand on environmental issues and wetland preservation? Because Ducks, of course, is very interested in wetland preservation. Why? Because of the ducks. It's not a secret. And the reply was quite long and thoughtful, and it included a lot of very friendly words towards green spaces, preservation of rural land and sustainable living, and wetland restoration. So I say, okay, there it is, it's all in writing, live up to it. And now that Premier Wynne has the power, it's not a minority government, now that she has the power, it is within her power to review the process, find out what did go on in that back room under the table, and set it right.
Overall, in the big picture for both Midhurst and for, I guess, the plan as a whole, are you optimistic towards it, or you think are we losing this battle, winning this battle?
Did you see that movie called Gladiator? Do you remember how it opened? It opened with the Russell Crowe character saying, "Hold the line." So that's where we are, hold the line. I would say write to Premier Wynne, Government of Ontario, who has expressed a lot of interest in green spaces and in wetland restoration and preservation. Write that letter, write it in handwriting, put a stamp on it, and mail it. That's the least you can do. But first of all, inform yourself, and they have the stat sheets, you know, they've got the stuff you need to know, the stuff you need to read. And yes, there will be opposition because a few people stand to make a lot of money out of this. A few people who don't live here stand to make a lot of money out of sucking the water out of your aquifer, filling it full of poop and shooting it into Georgian Bay.